clear to everyone that trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. Growing up, I always felt the undercurrents of that broken trust between my parents. Despite the reconciliation, there remained a tension that time alone couldn't heal. From a young age, my sister Hazel had been the center of my parents' world. My parents, both ambitious and career-focused, had instilled in her a strong drive for success. They functioned as a tight-knit trio, united in their goals and aspirations, which often revolved around achieving professional excellence and maximizing life's opportunities. However, the intense focus on career advancement came with its challenges. My parents' relationship began to suffer as they both became increasingly absorbed in their work, leaving little time for each other. This growing distance led my father to harbor unfounded suspicions of infidelity against my mother, exacerbated by their lack of quality time together. These suspicions were completely baseless, as my mother was overwhelmed with her physiotherapy, the care of Hazel, and the daily management of our home. The strain of maintaining such a demanding lifestyle took a physical toll on my mother, culminating in her collapsing at work one day. It was then, amidst the chaos of her hospitalization, that she discovered she was 2 months pregnant with me. The pregnancy had gone unnoticed due to her hectic schedule. The news of my impending arrival did not bring joy to my father. Instead, he reacted with disbelief and denial, convinced that I could not be his child. This accusation devastated my mother, who defended her fidelity vehemently. The situation escalated, leading to heated arguments and my father's temporary departure from our home. He declared he would not return until my mother proved my paternity. The atmosphere at home grew tense, with Hazel witnessing the turmoil at a formative age. It was only after DNA tests confirmed my paternity that my father's doubts were dispelled. His parents, my grandparents, were incensed by his actions and firmly supported my mother, chastising him for his distrust and lack of support. My father, faced with the undeniable truth and the disapproval of his own parents, returned home apologetically, but the scars of the ordeal lingered. The dynamic in our family had irrevocably changed. While my parents remained together for the sake of the family, the trust that had once underpinned their marriage had eroded. Throughout my childhood, the complexities of this family history were a backdrop to my own experiences. My father, regretful of his past actions and the distance it created within our family, struggled to mend the bond with my mother. As for me, I grew up shadowed by the circumstances of my birth, always feeling like an outsider in what seemed like a pre-established familial bond that I could never fully be a part of. This history of mistrust and reconciliation has taught me valuable lessons about the complexities of relationships and the impact of forgiveness. It has shaped my understanding of family as a structure built not only on love, but also on the continuous effort to nurture trust and understanding. It became clear to her that her marriage was entering a new phase. She had always been the one to shoulder more than her share of responsibilities, both at work and at home. However, a recent realization about the value of her own life prompted a change. She was no longer willing to bear these burdens alone. She expressed to my dad in no uncertain terms that he needed to step up at home. If he failed to do so, she was ready to leave. This wasn't just a warning. It marked a shift in the power dynamics of their relationship. My dad had to accept his mistakes and meet her demands. Though they managed to reconcile, the trust between them was damaged, and my mom no longer felt obliged to single-handedly maintain their family life. This change led my dad to harbor a belief that I was somehow to blame for the cracks in their marriage. He thought that my birth was the catalyst that strained their relationship. It seems almost childish, but that's how he perceives it. My existence is seen as the starting point of their marital problems. Ever since I can remember, he has had this strange resentment towards me, which has excluded me from his life in many ways. He can be manipulative, outwardly kind and affectionate when others are watching, but cold and distant when we are alone or just with close family. My dad's attitude towards me has been palpably cold since I was a child. My sister Hazel recalls his neglect and how he would ignore me when I cried, leaving the comforting to my mom, Hazel, or the babysitter, anyone but himself. He seemed to decide early on that I was not his responsibility and an unwelcome addition to the family. Despite this, the only time he seemed to pay any attention to me was when I excelled academically. In high school, I became intensely focused on pleasing others, especially my dad, through my achievements. I worked hard for good grades because I knew that was the only way he might recognize my presence. His attention felt like it had to be earned. It was never about love or genuine connection, but rather transactional. For years, I chased his approval, hoping it would be enough for him to truly see me. Throughout my life, I've always felt overshadowed by my sister, Hazel. As a child, I sensed that no matter how well I performed or what achievements I racked up, I'd always be second best in my father's eyes. This realization grew more profound as I ventured off to college, striving for academic excellence, yet still finding myself trailing behind Hazel in my dad's affections. Despite this, I harbored no resentment towards her. Hazel and I shared a wonderful bond. Given our age gap, she often took on a maternal role, showering me with love, protection, and assurance, ensuring I never felt left out. Though I cherish the bond Hazel and I have, there's always been a slight tinge of jealousy concerning her effortless connection with our dad, an intimate bond one longed for, but seemed unattainable. Despite my mother's attempts to bridge this gap, my father remained distant, often leaving me feeling like an outsider within my own family. This ongoing neglect was deeply painful, more than words can express. After college, I came to a crucial realization. I was exhausted from endlessly seeking approval that seemed forever out of reach. This epiphany led me to therapy, where I began addressing the deep-seated feelings of abandonment and exclusion I'd carried for years. Therapy was transformative, helping me to heal and redirect my focus towards personal growth and my career. Gradually, I learned to find fulfillment in my achievements and stopped seeking my father's validation. Years later, my life took a positive turn when I met Daniel. He was not only charming and supportive, but also deeply understanding of my complicated family dynamics. Daniel's presence in my life has been incredibly empowering, helping me grow stronger and more resilient. What I appreciate most about him is his unconditional support and his clear-eyed view of my past struggles, including his justified disdain for my father's treatment of me. With time, I've come to accept that I might never have the ideal relationship with my father. Yet, with Daniel's love and the inner peace I've found, I feel more whole, valued, and understood than ever before. At family gatherings, my dad often keeps to himself, much like he has throughout my life. I think in his own way, he's showing solidarity with me when he interacts minimally with others. Conversations with my cousin Daniel are usually brief and superficial, mirroring the distance I've always felt from my dad. He's never mentioned Daniel's behavior to me, likely because it reflects how he's treated me over the years. A few months back, Daniel proposed to me, and I eagerly accepted. Since then, we've dived into planning our wedding, thrilled about starting this new chapter together. Daniel and I both have DDF and have chosen to remain child-free, which has allowed us the financial freedom to craft our dream wedding. We're excited to celebrate our union with loved ones from near and far, creating a day that's all about our love and shared achievements. During the planning process, my mom suggested I have my dad walk me down the aisle. While I considered it briefly, I've never felt at ease with the idea due to our strained relationship. Instead, I felt drawn to having my uncle, one of my dearest supports, accompany me. He has always been a significant and loving figure in my life, unlike my dad. The thought of my uncle walking me down the aisle felt right, a true reflection of the support he's provided. However, when I expressed this choice to my mom, she strongly objected. She felt it would seem insensitive and raise eyebrows among our relatives if I didn't adhere to the tradition of the father escorting the bride. Although I understood her concern about family expectations and traditions, my decision was about personal connections, not conforming to norms. I was conflicted, caught between family expectations and my own desires for my wedding day. Under continued pressure from my mom, I hesitantly agreed to have my dad walk me down the aisle, even though it wasn't what I truly wanted. This decision weighed on me as I navigated the complex emotions of honoring family while trying to stay true to myself. Even though I knew deep down it wasn't what I really wanted, it meant a lot to her, so part of me was willing to go along with it to avoid any tension as the wedding approached. However, the conversation with my father didn't go as I had hoped. Far from being moved or even considering my request, he seemed offended when I asked if he would walk me down the aisle. He bluntly stated that he had never seen me as his real daughter. His words were painful, yet not unexpected. I had grown accustomed to his cold demeanor over the years. Despite the sting of his words, I pressed on, trying to explain how meaningful it would be to my mother if he participated. I hoped that by emphasizing that it was more for her than for us, he might relent for the sake of family harmony. Yet, he remained utterly indifferent, even declaring that the only daughter he ever envisioned escorting down the aisle was Hazel, my sister who has always been adamant about remaining single and avoiding marriage, a constant source of exasperation for our parents. As our conversation continued, he made it clear that he thought the whole tradition of being walked down the aisle was unnecessary and outdated. This dismissive attitude only confirmed my long-held feelings of emotional neglect from him. Feeling defeated, I ended the conversation with no expectations, just a reaffirmation of the distance that had always existed between us. After some reflection at home, I decided to listen to my heart and asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle. He was overjoyed and immediately accepted, deeply honored to play such a significant role in my wedding. His enthusiasm brought me immense comfort, affirming my choice. I also discussed my father's reaction with Hazel and my mother. Both were disappointed, but hardly surprised by his behavior. Hazel, in particular, expressed her frustration, more attuned to the disparity in how our father treated us. They both supported my decision to involve my uncle, which helped me cope with the situation. On my wedding day, my uncle walked me down the aisle with pride. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with love and joy. Having him by my side was perfect, and as my partner John and I exchanged vows, the support and happiness from that moment were palpable, making it all the more special. At our wedding, the atmosphere was incredibly touching. Every guest was visibly moved, shedding tears during the heartfelt vows. It was one of those magical moments where it felt as if all the love and dedication we had invested in our relationship had come to fruition in perfect harmony. My father was there, yet he remained aloof, scarcely interacting with my husband John or me. He didn't offer congratulations, and during family photos, he kept his distance, almost as if he wasn't really there. I chose to focus on the joyous presence of friends and family who were genuinely celebrating with us, rather than let his detachment spoil the day. However, his odd behavior didn't go unnoticed. After the wedding, it became widely known that he hadn't walked me down the aisle, not because I hadn't asked, but because he chose not to. I'm not sure who initially shared this detail, whether it was Hazel, my mom, or my uncle, but it didn't take long for everyone to learn the truth. Since then, many family members and guests have been quite vocal in their criticism of him, reproaching him for his lack of paternal involvement and sarcastically noting his failure as a father figure. This news reached me through my mother, who found a grim humor in the situation. It was intriguing to see my father finally being held accountable by so many. I thought this phase would soon pass, but recently, he began leaving voicemails, desperately trying to persuade me to declare that he had been a supportive father and that it was my decision not to have him walk me down the aisle. His requests were in vain. I could not rewrite the truth nor repair his tarnished image. His pleas turned into demands when he started losing relationships over the rumors stemming from the wedding. He warned that these familial strains could affect future events like Hazel's potential wedding, fearing she might also exclude him. Despite his continued attempts to sway me, I remained firm. I reminded him that he had never truly acknowledged me as his daughter, having made his feelings clear multiple times. Therefore, he had no right to make such demands. His messages have since turned into attempts to guilt-trip me, portraying himself as a victim while overlooking years of emotional neglect. It's frustrating to see him refuse any responsibility for the consequences of his actions. Many have echoed my sentiments, affirming that for my father, it's always been about maintaining appearances, never about genuine care. This situation has cemented my decision to permanently distance myself from my father. Many have wondered why I hadn't taken this step sooner. The truth is, he wasn't a significant presence in my life, and I had become indifferent towards him. The issue resurfaced when my mother suggested I ask him to walk me down the aisle, reopening old wounds. I initially saw it as an opportunity for reconciliation, but it turned out to be a mistake. Recently, my husband spoke with my father, making it clear he should keep his distance. John supported the family's views of my father as negligent, highlighting that he never positively influenced my life. My husband emphasized that despite my father's negative attitude, I had thrived. He made it clear to my father that any issues should be directed towards him, not me. Since then, my father has stopped sending disruptive texts. Regarding why my mother and my sister, Hazel, seem to tolerate my father's behavior, it's important to note they've always supported me, though they couldn't fully control his actions towards me. After deciding to discuss everything openly with my mom, I shared how growing up with a resentful father was challenging. I told her about the emotional strain it caused, even blaming me for circumstances beyond my control from birth. Upon hearing this, my mother was moved to tears and apologized for not protecting me better. Moreover, I expressed concerns that my father might resume his old ways, urging my mother to intervene as his behavior was affecting my mental health. She promised to handle the matter promptly. It turns out she, along with Hazel, my uncle, and even my paternal grandparents, staged an intervention. They confronted him about his unjust treatment of me, stressing that the fault lay with him, not me. While I'm not privy to all the details, the intervention seemed to have an impact, as he later reached out with a tepid apology. Though it seemed forced and he didn't fully accept responsibility, he admitted his ongoing struggle to view me favorably. This series of events has shown me the importance of setting boundaries and advocating for my well-being, reinforced by the support of my loved ones. From now on, he's decided to keep his emotions to himself and stop troubling me with them. He also apologized for not walking me down the aisle and promised that he wouldn't try to involve me in clearing his name with our family anymore. In response, I took the chance to establish a clear boundary with him for good. I told my dad that for my own mental well-being, I had to cut ties with him. The pain he had caused me over the years was too much, and I could no longer interact with someone who repeatedly hurt me. He respected my decision with little resistance. 7 months have passed since I stopped communicating with my father. I still meet other family members, but I carefully avoid any gatherings he might attend, and he does the same. Interestingly, about 4 months ago, my cousin Hazel also ended her relationship with her father. After moving to a new city, she completely blocked him out of her life. Hazel confessed that she felt guilty about how he had always favored her over me and had been contemplating distancing herself for some time. Her relocation helped her make that necessary break. My mom shared that it was a tough blow for my dad when Hazel chose to cut him off, but there was nothing he could do about it. Nowadays, I feel much lighter and happier. For so long, I had struggled under the weight of seeking my father's approval and wondering why I could never measure up. Letting go of that relationship has been the most beneficial decision for my health and happiness, a step I now wish I had taken earlier. These days, my focus is fully on my life, my marriage, and surrounding myself with people who genuinely love and support me.